Today, we're looking at Noodler's Burgundy. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, Noodler's Burgundy is a very nice magenta ink. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do my writing samples. I then put the ink into a different pen for a day. I then put it into a Noodler's Ahab with a modified flex nib to take my notes for this video. Before we get to the writing samples, let's take a look at the sciencey bits. And up first is the chromatography, and I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done, and we see this really interesting pink that pushes up into that magenta, making it, kind of predictable in that could be very watered down, but I got a feeling it's made of some very dark reds, very dark magentas with some pinks. And the one on the right that I let dry for 10 minutes confirms this, because when I dunk it in the water, we see a thicker pink line being left behind at the bottom. And then it pushes up and looks very much the same as the original one. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page and how hard it might be to clean out of your pens. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, I would not highlight this because of how the second H performed. I don't need my writing to smear and reactivate that much where I might lose some important writing. The water completely reactivates, pulls most of the ink up. I can see some of the white of the page through what's there. Makes me feel that water is all that would be needed to remove this. Pen Flush did very much the same thing. It pushed a lot of it out of the way. We get more of the white, but I don't think you would need Pen Flush. Bleach did something interesting, because while it turned that spot white, around it where the bleach touched, turned this really interesting purple. Very nice to see. I didn't see that purple in the chromatography, but it comes through with the bleach. Kind of cool. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Noodler's Burgundy has a viscosity of 2.25, making it a very normal flowing ink. To find my average dry time, I use my writing samples done on the extra fine, or done with the extra fine and the medium nib on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with a realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Noodler's Burgundy has an average dry time of 17 seconds, not just making it normal, but making it truly average. Now let's look at the writing sample. I have this ink in sample form. And to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub. I use a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium. And I use a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's look at Clairefontaine. So, I would want to call this my mistake. But that's not my mistake. And that's not my mistake, and that's not, and that's not, and that's not, and that's not. Now, it didn't happen all over the paper, but it did happen at the very top with the 1.1 stub. So, we do get some bleeding. No real ghosting, but we do get some bleeding. And when I look at the 1.1, I have feathering. I wanted to like this blue. I like blue as a student. It's the traditional student color. I like it. This one just doesn't seem to be doing well. I'm disappointed. Alright. We have no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. When it comes to the extra fine, we have no real feathering. It looks like a little's occurring on the F. Nowhere else in the writing. We have no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade, 5 seconds to dry. Onto the medium, no feathering occurs there. So this might have been an edge of the paper thing. It could have been my hand. It could have been maybe I scratched the nib on there. It didn't bleed through, but I'm definitely seeing some feathering. But the amount of feathering I saw up top makes me feel like it's a feathering and not a me error. I see some of the same feathering show up with the 6 that occurred on the medium. So I'm seeing feathering with this ink. That's just disappointing. I'm surprised. Extra fine, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 5 seconds to dry. With the medium, no feather, no spread. Minor feather, right? So we get a little. I'm going to call it no feather. It's not the end of the world here. Don't use the 1.1. No spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 6 seconds to dry. Looking at the scrubby, we get no expected color variation. It shows much more on camera with the extra fine, but we don't actually get it as an in-person thing. Smear, you could recover that. I'm looking at Tomoe River. On Tomoe River, we have no bleeding. That follows the line of my writing. Makes me feel it was me. And here I'm being aggressive. This might have been a paper that, because of when I'm cutting them up, I'm moving them across a board all the time, it might have gotten a scratch there. I don't know that I'm really seeing bleed here, and this is where it's going down aggressive. But we do have ghosting because it's Tomoe River. Let's look at the 1.1 at the top. We have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade, nothing. Dark blue, dark. Extra fine. We have no bleed, We have no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 7 seconds to dry. 7 seconds. That's a long time. That's a long time for a fast dry ink. The black took 4 seconds to dry. I don't know why this one took 7 seconds. Even when I look at the medium, the 8, 6, that's not such a big discrepancy. But look at that. I don't know what happened there. On the medium, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 8 seconds to dry, very close to the black. Looking at the scrubby for both the extra fine and the medium, I do not expect to see color variation. I just don't think you can recover that as a smear. Common thing here. Going on to Rhodia. We have bleed. We have bleed on the Rhodia paper. No real ghosting, but we do have bleed. With the 1.1, we have definite feathering. No spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. Crazy feathering. On the extra fine, I'm not seeing feathering. I see no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 5 seconds to dry. I want to talk about my notes on this because it's interesting what occurred. So I use the FPR Himalaya with their flex nib to do this because I like to go ahead and torture myself. I'm going to use a fast dry aggressive ink with a flexi nib and put it down thick and then worry about what happens. But you could. This is a student priced pen. It's not expensive. So a student absolutely could wind up with this. And when I use that, I see feathering, still the Rhodia paper, all over the Noodlers where I'm not going in, very heavy at all. When I start getting heavier on the flex, I get feather. When I'm heavier down here in my writing, I get feather. And look at the back of the page. This is Rhodia paper. Bleed like crazy. So we're getting bleed like crazy with this ink on Rhodia paper. Granted, it's putting it down really thick right there. So use a drier pen. Use a drier pen. The medium, no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 6 seconds to dry. We don't expect any shading when it comes to looking at the scrubbies. We're not expecting to see it come out, but looking at the smear test, I could definitely recover that. So I like to sometimes go ahead and throw it up against the yellow paper just to see if I get any kind of tone difference. This is still Rhodia paper. We still get some bleed spots. No real ghosting, but we still get bleed. Looking at the 1.1, we still have feather. We have no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade, but that feathering's a lot. Looking at the 1.1, I have no real bad feathering, minor feathering, no real bad feathering. No spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. Almost no tone difference from the white paper to the yellow paper. I say almost no tone difference. Yes, we do get a slight bit of a greenish with this, But the blue is the blue. Look at it with the 1.1. Look at it in the scrubby. The blue is the blue. This is a very strong blue. With the medium, we're getting minor feathering that occurs. I see it in the F of fox. I see it in the G of dog. I see it a little bit in the V of over. Very minor feathering. It's not so bad it's distracting, but it is there. We have no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade, and when we look at the scrubbies, we don't expect any shade at all from this ink, but I could definitely recover it. Look at the smear, I can definitely recover it. So then I went to Franklin Kristoff paper because, hey, let's look at a pen manufacturer and look at their paper. So let's see if we get bleed. Now, Franklin Kristoff has not always done the best for me in it. I don't mind that it's a very matte finish that I get from them. But I'm going to call it an ink problem here, not a paper problem, because this ink did bleed through a lot of papers. Since it's bleeding through a lot of papers, I don't want to blame Franklin Kristoff paper for this. Looking at a 1.1, we have no real bleed or no real feathering with the 1.1, which is nice. We had a lot of feathering with other papers, but we didn't get it here. We have no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. Looking at the extra fine, we had no feathering. We had feathering on Rhodia. We have no feathering here on the Franklin Kristoff, which is not my favorite paper. It's not bad paper. It's just not my favorite paper, but we have no feathering. So it's getting that ink a little under control despite the bleeding problem. No feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade, 2 seconds to dry. On the medium, again, no feathering. It tamed this ink. So there's a real plus here with this Franklin Kristoff paper. It tamed the feathering that was occurring on Rhodia. It just can't get the bleed under control, and I'm not going to fault the paper. No spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade, 3 seconds to dry. Looking at the scrubby, we know we're not going to have any shading on this because the scrubby gives us nothing, and without a doubt, you could recover that if you smeared while you were writing. Rest assured, your writing's protected. That's all I have for the writing sample. Instead of finding inks that look like Noodler's Burgundy, I would prefer to find an ink that complements the color on the page. And I've chosen Noodler's Bernanke Blue because it's a very vivid blue color. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I would ask if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. What do I think of Noodler's Burgundy Royale? That's right, I've been calling it Burgundy, but it is Burgundy Royale. I think it leans very magenta. Very magenta. I also think that it really holds up in its shading pretty well until you get to broad, wet nibs. Then it loses its shading and becomes just a burgundy magenta color. But depending on the nib you use and the paper you're putting it on, this can be a great alternative to red for many people. Thanks for watching.